When dealing with APIs, we care a lot about that interface. It's an understanding between the user, us, and the service, Forecast. It's sort of like a contract. It tells us what to call, and it tells us what will be returned when we call it. The rest of the implementation details are hidden from us, and that is fine. Let's take a deeper look at the Forecast API. If we come to developer.forecast.io and then click on API Docs up here, we can read all about how to use the latest version of this API. We care about this one here, that is the main API call that returns the current forecast for the upcoming week. It includes the current weather, as we will see in just a moment. This is basically the interface we are going to use. We need to do just a bit of work to use it, of course, but in essence, we are going to make a request at this URL here and then handle the response. More on those details in a little while. The Forecast API is a web API which follows a programming pattern called RESTful programming. REST stands for Representational State Transfer, and all that means in our context is that when an API adheres to the principles of REST, it does not require us, the client, to know anything about the specific structure of the API. A RESTful API provides whatever information the client needs to interact with by means of an identifier, which in most cases is a URL. A URL is a reference to a resource like www.google.com, or in our case here, the special URL that will give us a weather forecast. RESTful programming is not necessarily restricted to the web, but most web-based APIs are RESTful APIs. In our case, our client, the Android app, doesn't know anything at all about the Forecast API. We simply request the data we need through an exposed URL with certain keywords that specify what data we want back. The API then returns this data to our client in a specified format, either XML, JSON, or some other data format. With a RESTful API, the only real restriction is the client and server need to agree on the data format used. Most web APIs tend to return JSON data, so in this course we will focus on what JSON is and how we can use it. Let's go back to the Forecast API documentation. Click on this link here for details about the first URL. This tells us how to construct the URL and what kind of data we can expect when we request it. The URL has a base component of api.forecast.io/forecast, and then we add in certain identifiers, including a private API key and the coordinates for the location we need. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go ahead and register for a Forecast developer account so we can use this API, and then we'll take each thing one step at a time. If we go back to the main developer page, then we can find a link to register here in the upper right. It's super simple, and all you need to provide is an email address and a password. I put the link in the teacher's notes if you need it. When you're done registering, you will see a link asking you to provide your billing information, but ignore that. We're going to stay on the free tier, where we get 1,000 requests a day for free. That's more than enough for our purposes, and we can always upgrade to the paid tier if we want to publish this app. Awesome. When you're done registering, join me in the next video and let's get our project started.